Hi, my name is Raquel Baldelamar, and welcome to the Mega Podcast, where I speak with high achievers on how they fulfill their professional dreams while maintaining balance throughout their lives. Today, I am speaking with Dr. Gal Aharonov, a world-leading, double board certified facial, plastic, and cosmetic surgeon. His meticulous attention to detail, customized personal care, and expert surgical skills have provided his patients with a natural, rejuvenated appearance. He specializes in facial plastic surgery to create balance, youthfulness, and beauty while maintaining an absolutely natural result. Dr. Gal was born in Israel and raised in Los Angeles. He attended UCLA before going to Chicago Medical School. From there, he returned to LA to train in general surgery at UCLA and then moved to Richmond, Virginia to continue his training in head and neck surgery and facial plastic surgery at the Medical College of Virginia. He then performed a highly competitive accredited fellowship in facial, plastic, and reconstructive surgery, one of only 30 fellowship positions in the world. Today, he has a private practice in Beverly Hills and is also a teaching instructor at the University of Southern California. Privately, he lives a modest and simple life. He believes in the dissociation from materialism, feeling that happiness should not be driven by material wealth, but by gratitude and humility. Between running his private practice, Dr. Gal is married with 2 kids and expecting a third on the way. Gal, welcome to the Mega Podcast.
Hi. Oof, that intro. Oh, I got to rewrite my bio, huh?
What are you going to rewrite it
Make
at?
it
Rewrite it after
make
you
it a
have
little
kids.
faster, right? It's like, oof, that reads long.
It does read long, but you've done all this.
I mean, I guess.
Especially the medical school part. I have so many friends who went to medical school and they talk about how they got burned out, and I know it was a hard process.
I mean, listen, anything in life could be hard, right? It's how we do it. In hindsight, actually, med school was probably the easiest part.
Really?
So it's all how you look at it.
Really?
I
That's
mean, I think
interesting.
about a lot of times in the moment, something seems kind of hard, and then we look back at it and we're like, oh, why was I so stressed about that? That wasn't too bad.
So medical school is easy for you.
No, I wouldn't say it's easy, but in hindsight, you're like, well, I guess it wasn't like the worst.
I guess it's perspective. There are harder things that may be other, and we'll get to that. Other the harder things.
Yeah, it's all perspective, right? And then hard in what way, right? I mean, sometimes it's like you're doing something hard, but you're not really responsible for anything. And that's very different. Having responsibility is sometimes just as hard as having to do the hard part, as
Right.
I'm sure you know,
Right. No,
right?
absolutely. What made you choose plastic surgery?
Seriously,
No,
the
not serious.
lifestyle.
Really?
Yeah. At first, when I chose it, because I mean, I didn't choose it till later. And when you're doing your residency, you're doing your internship, and you're working so hard, and then you're looking at people that are done on the other side. And I remember when I thought I wanted to do neurosurgery, and then I'm like in the hospital at 3 in the morning, and there's like some 60-something-year-old neurosurgeon there working, and I'm like, what are you? Is this the life? I'm like, I'm not going to live that way. So initially, it was to give me a sense of control. I think like people that are working really hard, their desire is to somehow have control or be in
Hmm.
control. So I think in the moment it was like, all right, well, how can I control my life? I could Plastic surgery can give me a lot of other aspects of control
Right.
that maybe I wouldn't have had in
Right. Well,
other
I've also
branches of
seen
medicine.
how in just the medical world, so many doctors are kind of getting just into the whole hospital system. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
private and they're their own bosses
You
anymore.
know what's funny?
And
Even in plastic surgery now, there's private equity firms that are buying out plastic surgeons' practices and then streamlining it and just buying out the surgeon. And the
really,
surgeon will still continue to work as an employee. Isn't that funny?
that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy that they're doing that. So even in plastic surgery, it's changing.
hmm
How has the industry of plastic surgery changed, would you say? Like since you started?
Well, I think when people look at plastic surgery, they're really looking at the cosmetic industry. They're looking at like the actual aesthetic part of it, not plastic surgery in general, which would encompass also reconstructive things and things like that. So I think people kind of be like, all right, cosmetic surgery. It's accessibility. I think it's probably more accessible now than it's ever been.
Hmm.
Think about it, but 20 years ago, even if you knew something existed, how would you find a surgeon to perform it?
Right. Right. And it's
Or
also just not everything's about surgery anymore.
yeah, you got the non-surgical
Right.
things, you got like and now it's not even just doctors that are doing stuff, right? You got nurses, you got nurse practitioners, PAs, everyone's getting into it. So
And that's a dangerous part. I mean, that's where it's, I think, a slippery slope when.
I don't know. Like, is it? I mean, I think calling things dangerous is sometimes protectionism. As if we're trying to protect the field in one way or another.
Mhm.
And the people that have control, they call it dangerous, maybe just as a power grab.
But it is also the training. I mean, um, the training, and I think your aesthetic of how you look at something, how you look to solve a problem. I mean, there's a reason I think people come to you from all over the world. And to give a little bit of backstory to our viewers, about 13 years ago, I was living in Phoenix. For many years, I had the droopy eyelid, and it was getting worse and worse, where my like one eyelid was just droopier than the other. And I went online and I was like, who is a doctor that's known to just help fix droopy eyelids? And you were recognized by multiple online platforms as like the doctor to go for, anything related to eye areas.
So if you would have searched for that maybe 5 to 10 years before that, you would have never been able to find it because there was no information of the type
Right.
at the time. So, yeah, accessibility, you found it. You're able to just go on your computer and search for something and find someone who can do it. So, again, that's what's changed. That's a big thing. And
Mm.
it's become easier and easier where people now don't even have to go and do a search. They'll get targeted. They're on social media or whatever. They might just get targeted with procedures and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that we could do that."
Yeah.
So accessibility and streamlining is probably the biggest changes.
You have pioneered surgeries, cosmetic surgeries, like dimple surgery and forehead reduction surgery, and a lot of different, I mean, just different kinds of surgery that just wasn't even something that was standard before.
And again, so it's how do you? It was stuff that was around before.
Hmm.
It was just complicated and hard to do, and the people that were doing it at the time just made a mountain out of a molehill. So how do you make something popular? You got to make it easy. So you have to take something and make it really simple and streamlined. And it's the Amazon effect. How do you take something and just streamline it so someone can just click on something at the greatest of ease and get it a couple of days later?
Is,
That's
is that what you want to do for your patients? Is make it really easy for them to come and get surgery?
I mean, if you think about the decision to change something or to fly somewhere just to have something done, I mean, that's a big decision.
Hmm.
So that's not my decision. I'm not influencing that. I'm just saying, look, if someone's going to decide to do something, how do you then make it as easy as possible for them?
But I think what also makes you such a great plastic surgeon is that you will actually turn people away. You've turned me away when I wanted to come in for fillers, and I said, and you say to, you don't need it, you don't need it. I've just, read reviews. There was like a negative review, but someone flew from New York to come see you, and then you didn't give them a facelift, and they wrote a negative review. And then you had a lot of people saying, this is why we love Dr. Gall, is that he's not driven by money, in the sense like he doesn't want to just give you whatever you want. He gives you what he thinks you need. And I really respect that, because I think a lot of the industry of itself, especially other plastic surgeons, they will almost just use the fear and insecurity you have about your looks and use that to try to get something out of you.
But you could say that about probably every industry. You can say that about plumbers. You can say that about, lawyers. You can even say that about your hairdresser. You might not need highlights or it might not benefit you and they might talk you into it. So it's probably every industry works to that extent, one way or
Every
another.
industry has those people that actually.
Sure, I think that's just human nature, right? I mean, human nature it's a balance of sometimes desire, right? Desire, fear, things like that. And they drive us. We think we want something. We think we want a certain lifestyle. And well, how do we accomplish it? What's going to be in the way of that?
What do you consider an aesthetic superior result in your work?
Look, it's all a matter of taste. Everything's a matter of taste. It's art. Think about, I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I'm sure there's people who think Michelangelo's work was crap, especially at the time. We weren't there. Who knows? Maybe half of Italy thought it was just nonsense what he was doing, and here we are. So does it? Who's to say?
But this is also where I think taste and training really help is that some people there's a lot of PAs where there's people in who are coming up who are can do injections, can do more cosmetic procedures that don't necessarily have the taste that
But some do. And
some
then
do.
some have better taste than the best trained plastic surgeons in the world.
Hmm.
So just because you went to some training and studied a bunch of stuff doesn't make you like really have great taste. Think about it. You could be the world's greatest, most heavily trained interior decorator, architect, and some people might be like, I don't know, I don't like that. So at the end of the day, it's taste. And people ask me sometimes, they'll ask me, oh, who do you recommend for such and such procedure? I'm like, man, I don't know what your taste is. I can't recommend because it's like recommending a photographer to do a photo shoot.
Well, this is where I think having a surgeon who is aligned with your taste is really important. I think that's,
I don't even say surgeon. You
you
should just in life we should just kind of hopefully
say
align
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 with
ourselves
everything.
with people that resonate with
Yeah.
us, right? And I mean, with life experience, we hopefully become better at being able to at least sense people's kind of motives.
There is this whole podcast is about balance. I think it's so important to have balance in life and everything you do, but I also think there's an element of balance in beauty. And what do you think of where does balance and beauty play a role in how in what taste and what good taste and like how to be beautiful? I think there's an element of balance in it, and I don't exactly know what that is. I just know I feel like, well, that's a balanced look.
Yeah, I think throughout the years people have tried to put some mathematical equations in what that means, and oh, this should be this ratio and that should be that ratio, and maybe it works sometimes, but I'm sure it's the same, like I said, in many other fields. You could try to generalize things. If we're going to equate this to interior design, be like, well, generally you need a couch and you need a chair right there, and that's the general thing. But it might not apply to every situation. And what looks good at the end is a lot of it is a matter of taste. It's a matter of our environment, what we grew up around. Like, for example, if you hypothetically grew up around, oh, I read an interesting thing where, in our country, a lot of people desire blue eyes, right? It's a
Hmm.
desirable thing. But in places where a lot of people have blue eyes, I think like, where was it, Denmark or Sweden, whatever, one of those countries that to me sound all the same,
Hmm.
where everyone has blue eyes, they actually desire darker eyes, right? So
Interesting.
so they would want their offspring to have darker eyes, and so our environment plays a big role too.
Yeah, our
Uh,
culture does.
and I'm sure what country we lived in, or who
Right.
we surrounded ourselves with, or who our best friend was growing up.
Do you think this, you grew up in Israel, and do you think the standard of beauty in Israel, for example, is different than the standard of beauty in LA?
I mean, look, I was only 8 when we moved here, but
Those
is
are
it?
formative years.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think back then it was even on my
Really?
radar.
Uh-huh.
It's funny because kids are affected by beauty. It's very, you see it in them. Like now that I have kids, right? Like even my little, not even 3-year-old, you can kind of see how he's kind of attracted to certain things and
Hmm.
looks at certain people a certain way. And so it's funny. There's something innate in us. And how did it affect me? I don't know. It's hard for me to recall, but I'm sure, studies have shown that even kids like to look at attractive people more so than not as attractive people.
I remember you telling me how you went to Peru and how in Peru people just look differently than they looked here in LA. And it just made me realize, like, I think that the standard of just we kind of are we have this normalization that everyone in LA needs to look this certain way because there's so much pressure on beauty and maintaining, your youth. But then you go to other countries and sometimes third world countries, and it's like people just look very different.
Oh yeah, but come on, you can't even equate access. It's the whole, idle hands do the devil's work, right? If
Yeah.
you're if you're busy, really just trying to survive and provide food for your children and shelter, I don't think you're gonna care about the size of your lips.
But maybe not totally third world, but let's say like Israel. I mean, do you think
Oh, this
that
stuff is so popular everywhere. In Israel, all the Middle East, I mean, pretty much every country, especially now because of accessibility.
yeah.
You could argue that back in the day, living in LA was really different than living anywhere else. And I think those differences have moderated over time, where because everyone could have access to these treatments or at least see what's available,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of makes it a lot more takes those inequalities out.
Right. Well, I also think social media has really almost just made that more accessible. At least the striving for beauty, has made that more
Striving
accessible.
for everything.
Right.
All right. I mean, it's not even just beauty, striving for certain lifestyle, for having certain things, for the way that we live. Oh, I want to be that person who flies all over the world all the time, or I want to have this kind of car, or live in this kind of house. I mean, where's the end in there's no end in sight.
Well, even with the focusing on beauty, like one of the things I've seen that's been very disturbing is just how there's all these Instagram filters now where you can do beauty augmentation by changing the face of your, the whole your shape of your face, changing your eye color, changing your hair. I mean, changing your total appearance. I'm sure you've even had uh, patients come to you and with pictures of their filtered selves and say, I want to look like that. So it creates this very warped sense of just what we should look like. And
It's so warped and it's funny because every every time someone brings this up, because people will come and they'll show me the app and
uh-huh.
they'll make these modifications like right in front of me. And yeah, you could put these filters on that are ridiculous. I mean, I was looking at this one video where there's a filter that makes you look like you got these skinny little eyebrows. and, and this girl was pretending to pluck her boyfriend's eyebrows,
Uh-huh.
pretending, and then showed him what he looked like with the filter, and
That's
he
what you're gonna
freaks
look like.
out. Well, he thought that that's what he looked like. So, what'd you do to my eyebrows?
Yeah, it's really amazing. But people, the fact that they wanted to come and say, I want to look like this, I mean, change their whole face and their eye colors and just, I mean, it's pretty crazy how that's actually
Why
now.
is it crazy? Like, why do we think that it's crazy? I mean, yes, it's crazy, but we can't think that it's crazy that we are where we are.
Do you think we always just kind of have that desire to change ourselves? And
If
now
this was available
this is what I
10,000
want to
years
do.
ago, people would have been doing it back then. There's no difference.
So
It's
social
just
media just made it available. Basically, yeah,
accessibility.
accessibility.
It's also so it's accessibility and making the procedures safe and easy.
Hmm.
All right, because before we even had anesthesia, right, which is what ether, right? Before there was ether, when we're knocking people out with ether, you couldn't just do random surgery, let alone elective surgery. So the rise of anesthesia, safe anesthesia, that was one big factor to making surgery a lot more accessible. And then, modifications over the years of making procedures just safe and effective.
So it really is like about just tapping into our primal desire to be beautiful. I mean, I think that's, I mean,
I don't
it's
know if
just,
it's beautiful as much as being safe, right?
you
So
think
it's
it's safe?
like Yeah, beauty translates to safety if you really think
Is
about
it
it.
safety or is it power?
Well, I mean, it
I think
all
it's
comes back to safety. If you have power, if you have beauty, then hopefully you're going to be more safe. And your offsprings might be more safe because now you could protect them with all your power and wealth and whatever. So at the end, it is safety, right? People just want to be safe.
Mhm.
And it's one way of achieving it. Beauty's power, power translates into safety.
It's been shown that people who are more attractive get more jobs, they are considered more trustworthy, they have more mates. For me, it's been also many ways about confidence. You know, if I can just feel attractive, it's that it gives me the confidence that
Yeah, think of this. It's all think of all the people out there that have confidence and they might not be quote unquote aesthetically up to standards. And yet they have the confidence and they're happy and they're doing great in life. And the flip side, sometimes I look at my wife, who I think is beautiful, and I'm like, oh my God, like she has no clue how pretty she is. And she's always, she might be down on herself at times, especially, popping out a third child in 3 years, right? I mean,
oh,
that doesn't feel great.
that's
But yeah, it's a what gives us that. Sometimes it's a placebo effect almost, right? Someone might come in, they might get something done. They might not even look any different, yet they now feel more powerful and feel better. And is it so bad, I guess, if that's the only effect? I don't know.
so you are have two kids and a third is on the way. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, home stretch on this third one.
When were you ready to start a family?
I mean, when's anyone ready, right?
You weren't
It's
ready.
like
It just was.
it's ideas of readiness. I mean, even when you first have a child and comes out and you love that child, but you don't really love that child. You love the thought of having a child. It's a culmination of getting to a point that you now love this thing that you don't really love it yet. You just met it. You
Mhm.
love the whole idea of the child. And then of course you fall in love with the child later, you hope, right? Or not, but
What does fatherhood now mean to you? Now that you have two children, a third on the way, what does fatherhood mean to
oh
you?
man, it's honestly, for me personally, it's so life changing and so challenging. It's challenging as my own personal growth, even, let alone how hard it is trying to hopefully be the best father you can be. All right, and that's
Mhm.
a challenge because you can always find ways where you could hopefully be a better father.
What values do you want to instill in your children?
It's hard. It's hard to even know what's important. And like because what we think is of value is again our own personal experience. So yeah, we're if you think about it, we're just continuing our personal experience onto our kids. We're
Mhm.
kind of giving them part of us.
And it's also, they have such different personalities. I'm sure you've
Oh
noticed your
yeah,
son has such different personalities. So, like, what you give your son that would be valuable to him could be very different than what you give your daughter.
and you can give them the same thing, and they digest it totally different. And yeah, who knows?
How are you now working to try to prioritize your work life, your family life, your responsibilities with just to be balanced so that you are giving the priority to your family and this precious time while they're very young, you're actually spending time with them, but you're also, you have other
I don't know if
responsibilities.
it's good. Who knows? Maybe it's best for him if I'm not around.
I
Who
think
knows?
that's not true. I think that's not true. They need, I mean, this is the time, because I'm telling you, after, like, once your daughter hits 14, 15 years old, she's going to want to, like,
Who
hang out with her friends.
knows, right? I mean, I don't know. Especially now being an older dad, it's very different. I do have the luxury of being able to spend time with them that maybe I wouldn't have had even 10, 15 years ago. So,
So you
and
have more time now
well, I can
in
choose to
your,
make time.
yeah,
I mean, that's the thing, right? When
yeah,
you're talking about uh,
versus when you were in medical school,
accomplishment,
for
right?
example. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different idea of what the whole point of making money and being financially independent is, but it's all a matter of opinion. One person's financial independence might be somebody else's, no, that's definitely not enough. So it's a constant struggle, right? I mean, because I'll tell you, fatherhood is a big challenge compared to just being single by yourself or not having kids, because now it's really not even about me anymore. I'm just a facilitator. I'm a caretaker to hopefully pass along healthy, normal, happy kids into the next generation.
That's the goal. I mean, that is our evolutionary, I mean, that we're driven evolutionary to do that,
I
I think.
mean, it's so nuanced, I feel, because then you can make the argument of, okay, there's certain aspects, regardless of what you do, it could be seen as selfish or not, right? Selfless or selfish. Okay, well, I want to spend time with my kids. Well, you can make the argument, well, shouldn't I just spend my time working so they're more financially secure when they're older? Okay, if you balance, it's not like you can't do it all. You got to make choices.
And you have to uh, go to the pendulum of the extreme to when you're making those choices. Like when you're working, like when you're doing surgery, you don't want to be really thinking about your
Yeah,
children,
you
you
don't want to
know? So
think.
you have
Yeah.
to go to the pendulum of all of that. I mean, and if you're with your kids, but you're on the phone or you're trying to not really, if your mind's somewhere else, like you're not really spending time with your kids.
And your kids will notice it in a heartbeat. As soon as I look at that phone, like I can tell they're looking at me.
Really.
So, and we don't show them screens, no TV, any of that. So you have to hopefully lead by example. So you're not just seen as a hypocrite.
So you talk about no TV, no screens. Like how old are your kids now?
So one's almost 3 in a
Okay.
couple of months. One just turned 1 a month ago, and then another one on the way in a few weeks.
Oh my goodness, a few weeks. That's so
Yeah,
exciting.
3 weeks.
So you're not going to have a lot of sleep coming soon in a few
Oh
weeks.
man, you never know. Sometimes they sleep great, and then they go through a sleep regression or whatever, and you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
And your wife having 3 kids on the way. Well, it's a lot of women would love to have a husband that's a plastic surgeon because anytime they need a touch up, they can just go to their husband. How does the affect those? Do you feel like your wife is sometimes more self-conscious because you are a plastic surgeon and you have like this critical eye? Or
I don't think she's more. I don't know. I mean, she's definitely, I would say, just a normal woman who's hard on herself, right?
yeah.
Um, she doesn't share a lot with me, I think because she knows I wouldn't want her to be hypercritical. And I honestly, I don't look at her that way anymore. I don't look at her critically.
You don't.
Now I don't
That's
even notice.
and
She
that
might come back with different hair or whatever, and
and
I
you
have
don't
no
even
clue.
notice.
No clue. I don't look at her that way. I don't think people should look at each other that way. I don't think it's healthy.
How do you work to maintain just that intimacy and just that connection with your wife? Well, you have kids. I'm sure they take up a lot of your time. You have this private practice. How do you, what do you do to try to maintain that part of just the intimacy, that connection with your wife? That's just the two of you.
Well, it's hard because you could be like, okay, having kids is definitely a big thing, right? And you hope that the kids also somehow bring you closer because now you're working with a teammate and you're
Hmm.
working together to raise these kids, and you hope that process also brings you closer and is intimate. And it is intimate in that way, but physical intimacy obviously gets harder. It depends on how the kids sleep. We used to, when you know the kid's sleep schedule, you at least know when you have a couple hours together.
Yeah.
But obviously, the more kids you have, and when especially at this point when they're young, that becomes difficult. We try, but it's hard. It's hard, and also, when your wife is 9 months pregnant, she
Hmm.
might not feel like she wants to be as physical at times, and sometimes she does, and it's and we're tired, but we try. I think everyone tries and everyone probably goes through different stages.
Hmm.
But intimacy is not just physical.
It's
It's
emotional.
yeah,
It's
do we
not
feel
sexual.
close?
There's even a difference between sexual intimacy and physical intimacy
You know,
and connection and emotional and mental and intellectual intimacy.
I mean, I
So,
definitely feel more connected to her now than ever, so that's good.
mhm.
Even though maybe we don't have as much alone time.
And how between all of this are you managing your own self-care? Is, your own nutrition, your own sleep. I know that, as a surgeon, you don't want to go into surgery tired.
Yeah, I look, I like everyone. I mean, I'm certainly, sometimes I balloon up a little bit, a few pounds this way, or I eat healthy or I don't eat as healthy. But I think over time, especially as you get a little bit older, you realize, yeah, we're kind of like old cars. The older we get, the more
Mm,
maintenance we need, the more
yeah.
delicate we are, and
Recovery time.
you can make the choice of being like, well, I'm going to take better care of myself with the little things, what I eat, what I put into my body, and yes, prioritizing sleep. Like I don't really drink alcohol almost ever. I certainly don't smoke, and I try to eat healthy. I'm not crazy, crazy extreme, but
How
pretty
much
extreme.
how much sleep would you get a night, would you say?
So I allow myself to at least have 8 hours. Do I sleep all that 8 hours? No, because sometimes I don't think my body needs so much, but I try to sleep somewhere between 6 to 7, 7.5 hours.
Good. And what about
Yeah.
working out? Do you exercise?
I do not as much as before,
Really?
but we have a little home gym, and I try. But man, I'll tell you, it's when when you don't have kids, you dream about having a home gym.
And then you
When
have
you
it and then
have
you don't use
kids,
it.
you're like, oh man, I'll do anything to just go to the gym. I wish I could go to the gym for 3 hours.
Do you think though, do you try to devote just your own alone time, whether it's meditation, just walking? I mean, it's because there's a lot of pressure that it's just that I'm sure you have, and it's demands, and you might like it. The kids, having a family, having a practice, um, just life responsibilities. But do you take time to try to just take time for yourself, or is it just now is it all interrelated with just all of your other responsibilities?
Look, alone time is different, right? I mean, before I had kids, I'd be like, oh, if someone would be like, oh man, I got to run errands. I'm like, ugh, what a bummer.
And now
What
you're
a
like, yes.
bummer. Oh, dude, that's self care for me. Let me go run some errands. All alone, driving in my car somewhere. And you're like,
That
yes, traffic. I get to be stuck here for a few more minutes. So self care could be anything. It's like, well, what do we see ourselves? Like, how do we do something? Uh, it's funny now. I mean, I've never liked washing dishes or cleaning up. And I'm not saying that I do that often now, but the odd time that I'm like washing a dish, I'm like, man, this is actually pretty relaxing.
it's your
Yeah,
own
it's your
meditation while
own
you're
it's your own time. So we could do anything could be relaxing and anything could be stressful.
well, I think that also to me that goes to your own like dissociation of materialism and just things of what causes you stress. Like you don't really allow external things to give you a lot of stress, it seems like.
Listen, you can only be so non-materialistic when you have a couple of kids and you live in LA, right?
Hmm.
It's all a spectrum. I mean, you need a stroller. I guess you
Yeah.
can argue that you don't. You need a car.
You need a house that,
You need a
has three
house.
kids.
So it's like you can't take that to an extreme. I guess some people do, and God bless them. But
What does money mean to you now? And how has your concept of what money means to you changed over the years?
my concept of money hasn't changed much, honestly. It's always been a way to give me freedom. And for me, freedom is not having to do stuff. That's my freedom, right? Like if I don't want to work, I don't want to have to work. If I don't want to, clean the dishes, I don't have to. That to me is freedom. But even that, if you think about it, it's pretty not that evolved,
Hmm.
right? So I don't know. What does money have? What do you, I think we kind of maybe are a little bit different when it comes to that. Like, how do you see it?
I mean, I've always said that money is a great servant, but a bad master. I think money gives you opportunities, it gives you choices, it solves problems, but you can't let it be the thing that guides you. And as we talked about too, like living in LA is so expensive. It's
I
um,
haven't seen a strong correlation between having money and not being a slave to it. I haven't seen it. Yeah, I get to meet in my field. I get to meet like tons of exceptionally wealthy individuals, and I don't see them. A lot of them, at least, are not liberated by having the amounts of money that they have.
do you think it's almost like is it the more money, more problems concept? Or do you think they're just not generally as at peace?
Well, it's again, as simple-minded humans, we fall into basic traps regardless of where we are, and one of the
Hmm.
traps is comparisons.
Right. You're a prolific writer on Instagram.
Not recently.
You have, I know, I haven't seen a lot of your
No.
Instagram posts. So to those watching though,
That's part of
is
balance, right? So
exactly.
some's got to go.
Something's got to go. It's your Instagram post.
Instagram's got to go. Sorry.
But when you're prolific, and to all of you, what is your Instagram handle again? To all of our viewers watching, Dr. Gall?
Dr. Gall MD.
Dr. Gall
Yeah,
MD.
simple.
So you have written some like incredibly thoughtful post about comparison, about self-acceptance, but you let's even in just comparison, you say and I'm just going to paraphrase this, but you say like we are wired to make comparisons. This is one of the main ways we learn and motivate. Society constantly tells us how valuable it is starting from before birth when we are compared to growth and development charts, but unfortunately, there is no easier way to judge than through comparing. It is impossible to truly know people's actual motivations, level, love, or true feelings. So we are left with only being able to judge through comparison. So we can, which is how we perceive our senses. But it can be good, but it can also be bad. And you say that happiness achieved through comparison is also very fragile, leading us to live in a constant state of needing external validation for satisfaction.
Yeah, but I would say it's also impossible to magically liberate ourselves from it. So yeah, it's like sure we have this thing which is our brain's constant need to compare ourselves to stuff, and we can't make it go away. So how can we live at least somewhat
Live with it.
peacefully with it?
And you say in this post is catching ourselves when we are comparing, good or bad, will help us see it for what it is. So just having that self awareness when we're comparing ourselves.
Well, it's just one step. You'd say that with anything.
Mm,
If you're in your own head looking in the mirror and you're finding a bunch of negative things, you it'd be nice if you caught yourself then and
mm-hmm.
stopped yourself from doing so. So, I mean, we all, that's just how we are. Are we even awareness is one thing, somehow magically stopping ourselves from doing it, that's a much harder thing to do.
But when we have like the beauty industry, when we have this celebrity culture, guiding us and saying like, no, this is not what you should be looking. This is what you should be looking like. I mean, that's a very powerful force that drives us not to compare ourselves in a maybe an unhealthy way.
I
But
mean, I think you could look at the beauty industry as just an example of the way this affects all of us in many different aspects of our life. Because again, I would say like, what percentage of the population is truly affected by the beauty industry, right? I mean, it's the lucky few that can even afford it or have access to it. The rest of the world is still suffering from other things. They're not preoccupied with beauty, but they might be using this part of their brain to negatively affect their happiness as well.
do you think that's a problem? I mean, do you think that, the
I don't know if
that
it's a problem, it's part of life.
yeah,
It's not
it's
something
it's it's
new.
just
It's
part
just
of just
part of
it's
us being
accepting.
humans.
And do you think that there are more people I mean, this is more accessible to people, not just in LA, but across many different cities, people who may not be as wealthy. I mean, it's is it possible for someone who maybe is, I mean, to who's on a like a middle class to be able to do small things to make themselves pretty, even like haircuts. I'm not even saying cosmetic treatments, but even like certain things, I think it is.
Sure. Don't you remember being a kid and you got like a
Yeah,
new pair of shoes or a new shirt and it
yeah,
made you feel like king of the world?
yeah.
Yeah, it's the simple things. We
New
can
shoes,
always,
yeah.
right? Did you remember like, my son
Makeup,
gets a
even makeup makes a difference.
anything. Yeah, you get a new haircut and somehow you feel like a new person.
How do you think an average person can cope with self-acceptance with the perspective and options that the cosmetic surgery gives them?
Well, it's, I mean, how do we could just take the power away, right? And we could be like, well, I mean, to me, that doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
but that's an active choice. Everyone always says, like, well, oh, the Kardashians, oh, I hate the Kardashians. Yet they follow them on Instagram,
Yeah.
right? They give them the power. That's the power. The power is attention. So if we give something attention, we're giving it power. If we all effectively decided to not have it matter, it would be gone.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to, not give away, not look at that. I mean, when our
Of course it's
brain,
hard
yeah.
because we're comparing ourselves to everyone else constantly. And it's not fair. I always say I'm like, listen, if I was a baseball player and everybody around me was doing steroids and that's how I was making my living, at one point I'd probably be like, man, I better start taking some steroids, even if I
Hmm.
felt like it was wrong.
Do you ever feel like the plastic surgery industry is it too much? I mean, the just the extreme focus and on just ag aggressive beauty treatments and just how constant, like you have to, you have to look this way. Does is it does it make you feel like, okay, this is just too much. I don't want to be in it.
Oh, of course. I wish it could all just be gone. I wish. But, I mean, it won't be gone. It
Well,
won't be gone. Like a lot of things. Again, it's just one example. Like 50 years ago, someone would get a car and it didn't really matter if it was an expensive car or not, and they would drive that car for 10, 15 years and no
mhm,
one would judge them for it. And now we judge people by what they drive, what they wear. It's endless. It's all part of the same problem.
let's talk about aging a little bit. I mean, at 42 years old, I've definitely, experiencing what aging, like what it means to just, it's just how I looked when I was 20 is very is, different than now at 40. And thanks to you, when I come to you twice a year for my own little beauty treatments, I'm grateful that I can afford you and I can afford to have that. I know not everybody can, but it is something that I think I and many women struggle with is just the how to try to look how we looked when we were younger. Not just not in, we're not talking about comparison to our comparison to other selves, but our own selves.
But that's your reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some people didn't like how they looked when they were younger, all right? And that's their reality. And there's no difference between your way of seeing things or theirs. At the end of the day, it's just wanting to feel good, right? So, how do we feel good? It's different. Someone might have been bothered by something their whole life and now they can finally afford to change it. And another person loved the way they looked like when they were 20 something and wants to stay that way.
But we all are aging, though. We all are going to age,
Sure, but
and
some people are doing better than others. And I think there's lots of other ways of taking care of ourselves that don't have to do
like
with,
what?
I mean, eating right,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Taking care of sleeping, like all the stuff
yeah.
we've mentioned, sleeping.
I've always believed that nature may have given you the face you have at 20, but you've earned the face you had at 40. And part of that is, the sleeping, the eating, the nutrition, because it is does get a lot harder. But if you look good at 40, I think you've earned it.
And let's keep in mind that earned it is it's a luxury.
Hmm.
Being able to take care of ourselves is a luxury that a lot of people don't have in this world.
Yeah.
It's a form of privilege. It truly is a form of privilege. And I know people throw around that term pretty loosely now, but it is luxurious to be able to even think in these terms and take better care of ourselves. And let's look at that as something that's fortunate, right? That we're lucky to be able to do. And maybe just just the factor, just the fact that we can sit here and talk about it and think about it, that in itself is a luxury. So let's celebrate the fact that we have the capacity to even sit here and think about it, as
Hmm.
opposed to having to even go through with it.
Right, because it's like it's the whole the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, I mean, I think about just people in, these refugees in the Ukraine, or people who, are in these third world countries where I grew up, in Bolivia, and people, it's like, some of these families who, people who don't have the opportunities, that we do in America. Like, it's like how they look, these little things about, oh, I have a droopy eyelid, or oh, I've lost some volume in my face. Like, those things just are not
Yeah,
going to
it's not on the
matter. They're
radar.
not going to matter when
Eh,
there's like some such other bigger
And
problem.
even
So
here, if somebody has a true health problem, it's not on their
it's true.
radar to
Yeah.
take care of their face or
Yeah.
body or whatever. They're just wanting to survive. So this is all luxury. It's all luxurious. And we have to be aware of that. And that awareness should lead us to at least be a little bit, hopefully, happier just that we have that luxury.
Do you think because you know that, and you work in this industry that is, kind of, I mean, it's very vain. It's, I mean, you work with, it's about that superficial look of how, which
It's all think. Don't you think it's superficial for the guy to, want to have a Lamborghini? It's just a superficial if you
it's
think
just
about
one
it.
element. It's one
It's an
element.
element.
It's an
It's an
element.
element, right? It's
But
no different.
does that, you talked about like your disassociation from materialism. Do you think that helps drive that because you are so much in this industry that is very much about looks and vanity and the superficial? It's like you just need a break from that, because it's like just your core self. It's like you're not the traditional plastic surgeon, that most people would think of. So is that, do you feel like you've become even more, almost like less materialistic, because
Um, I don't know because I'll tell you, you still wanna be comfortable in this world, and comfort in itself is a is something that we compare one person to the other, and honestly, we just get used to something, and it's not as comfortable feeling as it was when we first got it, whether it's a new pillow or a new bed or whatever, that sense of like, "Oh, this is so much more
mm-hmm,
comfortable than what I had before," it fades pretty quick.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, my own personal journey, look, it fluctuates. I don't think there's anyone that has like the right answer and they're just always moving in the right direction of becoming a better person or becoming more free or liberated. It's a day-to-day, sometimes moment by moment struggle depending on all these other feelings that tug at you. So, it's like, look, I see people suffering, right? And when they come to me, I can't compare myself to, let's say a cancer specialist who people are coming and they're about to die potentially. This is different, yet it's weirdly the same because
Well,
suffering is suffering.
it is suffering. I mean, I had been preparing for this interview. I was reading some of your past interviews, and you talk about how, um, after your treatments on some of your patients, they would go and they would get a job promotion, or one person would, uh, basically left her marriage because, she was being abused by her partner, and she just finally stood up to her partner. But it took that treatment to give her the confidence to do that.
Yeah, it
So
weirdly happens a lot.
yeah, so there's a real, I mean, and for me myself, it's like it's giving me the confidence to go and, just fight the world, fight, just deal with all the challenges I have to deal with in the real world. It's like feeling attractive is like it gives me just an incredible amount of confidence.
Yeah, it's funny though. It's like you don't have to be a surgeon to have that effect on people. My wife just sent me she sends me a little Instagram post and sent me a post from Overheard LA where
Yeah.
one woman's like, I thought about going into medicine, but I didn't because I already feel like I have a great impact on people's lives. And the person she's talking to is like, well, what do you do now? She's like, well, I'm a permanent makeup artist. And on one hand, it's funny, but on the other hand, it's true
Yeah.
because we could always have that effect on people's lives. We don't have to go through, years of training or whatever. We could just have a positive effect on people.
Okay, but like you talk about years of training, which requires hard work. And I mean, you can't just be a surgeon and, and without just doing it. So I think there is a protective element of it. I mean, anybody, if I'm going to ever have surgery of any kind, I would want to go with somebody who is well trained.
Okay, but
So,
all right, this is the way I would say it. Okay, so yes, you go through years of training, but what percent of that training am I actually using right now? Right? Like, have I ever even learned what I'm doing during my training? No. I mean, there's elements that prepare you, right? And say, okay, well, having this ability can now prepare me to do this. But in reality, I could probably train someone to do a certain procedure effectively in probably a few weeks or months without all that training. Imagine being an Olympic athlete and someone telling you, well, you can't be an Olympic athlete until you've mastered every single sport in the Olympics, right? Only then can you choose an
yeah.
Olympic activity to do, Olympic, uh, you know, whatever sport you want to be in.
My one of my previous interviews for the Mega Podcast was an Olympic athlete,
Mm,
and she won the silver medal in the 2018 Winter Olympics, and she was always an athlete, but she started training to be an Olympic athlete at 30 years old, and she
yeah,
won it at 33 years old.
it's
So
funny. So
that's
every time I watch the Olympics, I say the same thing. I'm like, huh, there's all these random sports. Who knows if I would have applied myself? Who knows in what?
hmm.
Archery? Maybe I would have been a Olympic archer. Who knows? But I've never done 99% of those
Are
sports.
there other career choices that you think about that like that could have been really fun to do?
Sometimes, but then I'm like, I got a fun gig going. But it's, I think anything could be fun and anything could be miserable.
How are you teaching your children like values like hard work and discipline? Because I do think across any field, those those teachings of hard work and discipline is really important.
Listen, it's not like my kids are old and I could somehow reflect back on years and years of being a dad, right? So
Hmm.
it's like, well, what am I doing this second? I mean, my first step is to recognize hard work, right? Like
Hmm.
point out, oh, that was hard work. That's what we should celebrate, like not what ended up happening. So I try to
But
do that
I think is it also through just modeling it, doing it yourself?
sometimes, but like I think little kid, look, my kid right now, I mean, he's not even 3, and I have to be like, hey, that was a lot of hard work. That's really impressive that you worked so hard and you focused that hard, right? As
Uh-huh.
opposed to like, hey, you got that in the hole, right? So now I'm
Yeah.
celebrating the goal, the result, as opposed to the process. So I try. How much effect is that going to have? I don't know.
But I think, I mean, it's you said to me once how like you had your son at the office one time when I came to
Oh
see you,
yeah, that's right.
and
The one time he was there, you were there.
yes,
Yeah.
and and you
Did
said
he poo in front of you?
no, he did not poop.
It's funny
That
because
was
he
another
was
patient.
he was like, I don't think he was even 2 at the time, and brought him in, and obviously at the time he's still in diapers, and I remember he's like in the corner. All of a sudden I look over and he's in a room with a patient. He's like,
And he's
I,
pooing.
I have poo poo.
That is bringing your son to work day.
Yeah.
That's a fuel balance. But I thought it was beautiful when you said how one day he wanted to dress in all gray
Oh yeah, that was
because
really touching.
because he and you know your wife couldn't figure out why he wanted to dress in gray
And
all
my wife
gray,
was
and
the
then
one
and
that
then
figured it
she's the
out.
one and
I
then she's the
know.
one because you're in scrubs is all dark gray and he wanted to be dressed in gray. So it's you're modeling and just through how you're behaving, what you're doing through your own dedication, like you're modeling and it's making him want to be like his dad. It's touches my heart.
Yeah, but who knows how many things I'm screwing up. I just hope I'm doing enough good things.
What are you gonna do when your daughter's 15 years old and she's like, "Dad,
Oh
I
man,
want fillers.
I already wake up in a
Dad,
sweat.
I want a nose job."
Yeah, I
Is
already.
is that you thinking you've screwed up, or just society and all our friends and Instagram and TikTok?
There's only so much I can do. You know, my kid goes to preschool, and one day he comes home. He's like, "Stupid, stupid." I'm like, oh, and you try not to have a strong reaction, right? Because I'm like, man, now you're gonna feed into it. And I'm like, oh, where'd you learn that word? Oh, little Mikey, right? So it's
Uh-huh.
like, how much control can we have over everything? We're not going to protect them from the whole world. They're going to go to school, they're going to have friends, and a lot of it is luck. You look at
Mm-hmm.
successful people, like, honestly, most of them shouldn't even be taking credit for their own success because there's tons of people that are busting their ass, working real hard, yet just been unlucky. And they haven't accomplished much by society standards of accomplishment today.
So you had to work very hard. You know,
So a lot of people worked
every
hard. I don't think I worked
you
exceptionally
don't think
hard
you worked.
compared to a lot of people. No, my nanny works harder than I do.
Well, how are you trying to instill those values of hard work for your children? I mean, what are you trying to do? Is that even important to you?
Of
Because
course,
it's
it's important to me, and I
like
always
because you're privileged, your children are privileged,
my
and
children
and
are
very
yes,
privileged. So how do
and
you,
already they
and
have things that
nannies
I've never
they have
had.
exactly. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's like you, uh, how do you? Because I think it is a challenge because it's how did they grow up not to be entitled and
I
say
don't
that.
know. I wish I knew the secret. I'm trying my best, but that's one of my big fears. How do you prepare them for that?
Mhm.
You can only model so much and do so much, and one day they're going to be smart enough to be like, "Hey, this house is going to be my house." I mean, you can't keep all that from them unless you blatantly say, "Well, no, I'm not going to give you anything," and then for all you know, that backfires
Mhm.
because they're like, "My stupid dad, he has all this much and he doesn't want to give me anything." Who knows? I don't know. If you know the right answer, please let me know.
No, but it is something that I think just recognizing it is an important part of it. I mean, because it's when you're young and if you want to believe that oh your parents can help, you know, just help you and because they're set, they have a financial comfort, you don't have to work as hard. And it's some and I've always for me I've really just believed that, you know, not having that kind of put that fire in my belly to work really hard.
I I don't know what's right, right? And at the end of the day, it's I'm gonna be dead, right? At the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, we're gonna be dead. And yes, maybe we'll leave certain things to them. I've never seen a study showing that the more money you leave a kid, the more they love you, or the more they think about you. Or I mean, is there such a thing? So I don't know what's right or wrong. You can give them a lot and maybe they do good with it, or maybe they become horrible people. And you can give them nothing and maybe they become horrible people still.
That's where luck comes into, you know,
Yeah.
play. You know, luck who your you know who your children are just innately is so much of it is luck. But I think that's wonderful that they're healthy for right now.
Yeah.
So, your Instagram posts are not only prolific, but they are very. It has such dark humor. I love, and it really that dark
I don't think
humor.
it's
You
dark.
don't think it's dark? It's dark, but it's
Dark's relative.
hilarious. It's so. I mean, where do you think that comes from? Because it is a very you show the ridiculousness of the plastic surgery industry and just this a very dark, funny way that speaks to me and a lot of other people.
I've always loved satire, right? I mean, I never, as a kid, I never read that much. I mean, now I love to read, but back then I would never read books. Like, I never read anything.
Mhm.
But I would read satirical things. I'm like, oh, this is real funny. So, I mean, yeah, I think maybe I write in a way that I would enjoy reading.
Mhm. Really. And do you feel like you're able to use your position of power as a plastic surgeon to when you post these memes that just show the ridiculousness of it, it's the person receiving it, reading it, it's almost like they experience this cognitive dissonance because they don't expect a plastic surgeon to say these things, yet it's so true. And it just creates this like cognitive dissonance in their brain that says like a plastic surgeon's telling me I'm not going to be happy by all of these beauty treatments that I do. It's so
I
it's
think it speaks to a very narrow population. Maybe I'm glad it speaks to you, but I don't think I write it with the intent of it having widespread effects, to
well,
be honest.
your comments, have a lot of, I mean, a lot of people comment on it and they engage with it.
Yeah, I do it, and I say to myself, if I was to die today
Hmm.
and my kids are going to grow up one day and read the stuff that I wrote, wherever that might be, right? Instagram or whatever. I wanted to reflect me, and I wanted to reflect the way that I feel. And that's as much as I think about it. I hope that people are affected by it and hopefully positively, but I don't know. It might not have that great of an effect.
Well, if you don't, you're not going to continue posting on it. I know that it's a
It's
balance.
time, right?
It is.
Maybe once my kids start ignoring me a little bit more, and probably any day now. Like, all right, I'm back to work. I'll work
No,
some more.
I think you'll start working a lot more. Well, speaking of work, like you kind of have a limited practice. You have a small private practice. You haven't expanded. Your mom works for you.
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
that dynamic like working with your mom?
Oh, it's good and it's bad. It's good. I mean, look, I'm very lucky because my mom's very experienced. I mean, she was a medical office manager for decades before. So,
Faye is wonderful. Like,
yeah.
she's wonderful.
And I'm probably a difficult person to work with. I'm gonna guess. I don't know. So I don't think. So it's good. It's bad because obviously it's a strange dynamic to be the boss of your mom and tell her what to do, and she's kind of hard headed herself. But look, I'm not a business person. Everyone's like, well, how come you haven't expanded and all that stuff? To be honest, it's just doesn't resonate with me. And I think it's part of just hopefully yourself as a person and what you can handle. It's just not something that is my strong suit.
And so you've chosen just to keep it small. Your hours are limited.
I don't
Your
like to worry. Look, my hours are limited now, obviously, because I have kids and I want to
Mhm.
spend time with them. And thankfully the pandemic was came at the perfect time for me.
Mhm.
Like to a point where people might question whether or not I was the one who started the pandemic just to have this.
So you can have more time with the kids.
Yeah, that was great. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way who are in my situation. But I mean that the start of pandemic, we all took a step back, and I decided I'm just going to focus on this for now. And yeah, maybe that means making less money or that, but it's thankfully I'm in a position, again, it's privilege, where I can switch back and forth as I would like, where a lot of people don't have that luxury. They had to decide, well, I'm going to spend more time with my kids, which means I have to quit my job.
Mhm.
That they don't have the luxury of scaling back.
You talked about books and how you like now you didn't read a lot of books when you were a kid, but now you like to read books. What would you say are like the three most important books that have changed your life?
Oh man, I don't know. Right now all I read is like
The kids'
how to
books.
beat kid books.
Dr. Seuss
It's
books.
like, how do I screw up my kid the least book, right? Parenting for Dummies.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I don't know, influential books. I don't really. I like this one book called The Inner Game of Tennis,
Oh,
which was kind of like how to focus your energies. It's like about tennis, but really it's an analogy. It's
mental,
an
like your,
old book. I forget
yeah,
who wrote it. I read this
I heard
decades
about that.
ago. What else has really influenced me? A lot of meditative type stuff. Right, just
Mhm.
like about like trying to figure out all these motivations that drive us, and not just meditation, but hopefully mindfulness and things like that. That's had a great effect on me, I would say, over the years.
Do you meditate?
I used to have a standard practice where I would meditate every day. I'd have a set time and sit there, and sometimes I would meditate for like an hour. And now I'm like, man, it's hard there's no excuse. You should always find time to meditate, but you could always find moments to meditate.
And you can meditate while you're doing the dishes or you're
Yeah.
running your errands.
Yeah. And I think meditation, for the most part, is kind of like all wrapped up in this whole, this new trendy thing that everyone's doing. But really, it's just about having some awareness.
I feel like I try to do it every morning. And
Mm.
for me, it's helped me just connect the my intuition, my unconsciousness with my conscious brain. That's how I look at it. Because I think almost like there is more intelligence to your intuition, to your subconscious that you give yourself credit for. And for me, meditation is allows me to try to listen to that.
Yeah, I think it's a personal thing. Everyone maybe gets different things or wants different things from it.
Hmm. Um, we're going to wrap up by asking a few short questions with short answers. Um, my philosophy is that what drives human nature is a combination of sex, money, and power. I know that seems dark, but I guess
No, no,
that's. Uh, what are the three things that drive you?
I mean, I don't want to be a slave. All right, so I don't want to be enslaved or indebted. All right, I don't want to be indebted to anything or anyone. And I want to feel like I'm progressing in life, hopefully becoming a better person.
What are your top three healthiest habits?
Oh man, depends on the week you ask me.
What your kids are doing?
Well, now let's see. I'm trying. So you know what's funny? Years ago, I broke up with a girl, and the main reason I broke up with her is because I thought it was annoying that she had a dairy allergy.
So your
That's
wife
how
does not
like
have a dairy
that's
allergy.
how like stupid I was at the time, right? A perfectly great girl. I'm like, ugh, it's annoying we can't split a pizza. And now I'm like, I don't do gluten, I don't do dairy, I don't do soy. I'm like the most high maintenance person,
Well,
which
do you
is
feel like that
probably
helps you? Do
karma.
you feel like that not having, not doing gluten, not doing dairy, not doing soy, it actually helps your body, makes you.
I don't, I would say this. I think we all should realize, number one, how important what we put in our body is.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to preach because I put a lot of other crap into my body that I probably could be living a healthier life. But again, it's the part of progressing and the awareness that some things create inflammation in our body. And I'm acutely aware of it just because I do work with my hands. So if I have any inflammation, I feel it. So again, it's awareness. I'm like, okay, to me, if I eat something and I can sense that it's not good for my body, it's very easy for me to make that transition. Be like, well, I'm not going to have that anymore,
Okay.
and try to be actually, you know, actually effective in eliminating that. But
Okay.
it's
So,
hard.
so food is like one element of how you try to be healthy. What would you say are two others?
Let me see. I try to always have some time where I'm bored.
Mm.
I think that some people try to be like always doing something. And for me, I think the most creative I can be is when I don't have to do anything. So
That's
that's
important.
like a treat for me to be like, even if I take an extra 10 minutes in the shower and just do nothing, or be like, you know what, I don't have that boredom. I'm too busy. Well, I'll cut my hours at work a little bit more, or this or that. So I think that to me is a luxury
That's
to have some
no,
boredom
I
time.
think that's a really great way to make, and it help your creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to be creative when you're constantly doing
Right.
something.
Right. When you all, I mean, I try to always make sure I don't have my calendar so booked up with everything back to back. Sometimes it's hard between running two
It's hard.
businesses,
Yeah.
but
And some people love being busy all the
yeah,
time. My best friend, he's like, hates having even a single moment of downtime.
really,
And I always be like, nah, come on, man, just be bored a little bit. It's
yeah.
like, no, that's crazy.
What else? Is
So,
there anything else that you would say? A third thing that you say that that's very healthy for you that you do?
I love just sitting there with my kids and reading to them.
Mm,
It feels like really healthy for me. I mean,
that's
you
great.
know, the little things, we work out, we do this and that, but
That's great
I
bonding.
mean, it's those to me because every day I do it, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to want me to read to them after this.
Mhm.
They'll be gone. They'll be gone just like that.
And I think that reading too will instill in them just a love of reading and learning. At least that's what happened with me, with my grandparents and my parents who read me a lot. That's something that I definitely noticed.
I
So,
think kids are also aware when they're getting our full attention and love. And, you know, you just want your kids to feel loved. You don't want your
hmm
kids to grow up wondering if their parents love them or if they're a nuisance to their parents or whatever. You want them to feel loved.
I have a principle that part of balance is having healthy vices,
Hmm.
things that uh, are not necessarily good for you, but that you get great joy out of doing. So, what are three things? What are your top three vices that bring you great joy?
Oh man, what are my vices? Oh, I have so many. It's hard to narrow
So
down.
this should be easier than the healthy.
I
The
watch like now I watch TV more than we should because I'll tell you it's
Are
like
you a binge watcher?
no because I like to kind of like slow play certain series
hmm
but I'm like, you know, man, after a day where you're like you just put the kids to sleep and I'm like, man, I'm just gonna veg in front of this couch watching something. It's
hmm
probably unhealthy. I shouldn't be doing it. I could be doing something better.
Okay.
I eat some crap that I shouldn't be eating. That's for
You're not
sure.
always gluten free or
No, I'm
dairy
always
free.
gluten free.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm strict with that.
Okay. So
No, I don't
what?
play around. Like if I decide to do something, I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
But
So what do you say? What do you consider eating that's not good for you?
oh man, there's always crap.
Pizza?
There's tons of crap that's dairy free and
Gluten free
gluten
pizza?
free. Oh yeah, I have like 3 pizzas in my freezer at all time. Yeah, so food. I mean, other unhealthy things that I do, and I don't know, like so many things.
Okay. You have one more. You have a
One
lot.
more really unhealthy thing. Oh,
It has to bring you great joy, though.
it brings me great joy. Unhealthy. I uh I probably, you know what I do? It doesn't give me great joy, but I don't know why I do. I should probably stop, but I do it. I'm like reading news all the time. Like, ugh, it's like, and it's never like, I don't know what it is. Just, why do we read so much news? I think that's the one thing we could all probably cut out safely because it's like, I don't remember the last thing I read in the last couple of years where it changed my life one way or another because I read it.
Is that the comparison to kind of see maybe it's the comparison selves of ours? Like we want to compare how we're doing against what everybody else in the world is doing
Or
and all their
what's the
other
world? Yeah, what's
problems.
the world
What's
going?
the
Yeah, what's
all the
happening in the
all the
world?
problems in the world
Ugh,
that
get rid of that. I don't know why I do that. That's a waste.
yeah, no, I think sometimes like I even will like look at just not the news but like Instagram and I'll be like, okay, I've been looking at Instagram way too long. I need to stop looking at it because it's
Oh
like not
yeah.
healthy.
Like I'm on Instagram obviously because of
hmm
work. I have to have an account, so I have to look at it and stuff. And yeah, it's easy to get sucked in.
Yeah.
It's horrible. I can't even imagine. Like I'm a reasonably strong-willed, you know, 45-year-old man, but kids, if I'm so affected by it, you're so affected by it. If we can get sucked in for 20
Yeah.
minutes,
What is going to be your policy with social media with your kids?
look, I'm gonna pretend like we're Amish for as long as humanly possible.
It doesn't exist. It does not exist.
That's my policy. How long can I keep up the charades
And
of,
then once they
no
start
TV?
once they start school, they'll be like, Dad, why don't I have my own phone?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I'll do.
Well, this is where instilling all those values, all those strong values, I think will help them. All that reading, all those nights of reading with
I'm
them.
gonna have to get rid of my phone. Be like, oh no, we don't have any phones. Hide it under my pillow or in a safe.
It's going to make you want to look at news even more, though, when you're like, don't have it in front of them. You'll be looking at the
I'm
news.
pretending to go to the bathroom all the time. Why does Dad go to the bathroom all the time? Like, man, just to.
There's a lot happening in the world.
world.
What are small things you do every single day to try to achieve balance?
Small things every day. I mean, I don't know if I think about it like that, right? It's just like you either feel like I look at my stress level, right? And I'm like, okay, do I feel stressed? Is something stressing me out? And if there's something that's constantly stressing me out, I'm like, how do I get rid of that? Or how do I change it? Or what can I do to remedy the situation? That's how I look at it. I don't think I'm like, man, I don't feel, I'm like, ugh, I'm kind of bored with work this lately, right? And we all kind of go through that where we're maybe like more into work, less into work, more into this, less into that. So I kind of like just adjust with that. That's how I, that's another way I'm treating myself, I guess, to be able to change things up, to feel less stress.
So you're constantly looking at yourself, like feeling, like really feeling
Yeah, how am
how
I
you're
feeling right
feeling, and
now?
then recalibrating based on how you're feeling.
Yeah, it's like, how am I feeling right now? Is this like just this moment? Is it constant? Do I need this? What's making me feel this way? Do I just need to let go and not feel this way and still do the same thing? Or is that, well, should I just eliminate this negative thing that is having this effect on me? But really, a lot of times, if we're having a negative feeling, we should just hopefully just let go of that.
What does wealth mean to you?
It means, like I said, lack of having to do things. I don't like having a lot of stuff, and I think it's not because I think stuff is bad. It's like I don't want to like maintain all this stuff. To me, it's a nuisance. So wealth to me is knowing that I don't have to worry about my children, and that's the thing. Having children like changes all that because now it's like it's not really about me anymore. What do I need? It's like, well, what do my kids need, right? And who am I to be minimalistic in the decisions of my children, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to regret not giving your children something that maybe would have been useful for them.
We like to leave our viewers with what we call a meditation. If you could put any phrase up on a billboard, what would that be?
Oh man, let me see. Well, let's see. Let's try to summarize what we all talked about. I mean, okay, so I would say this, right? Here, I got to make it short, right?
Yes, it has to fit a billboard.
Okay. How about everything matters, but nothing matters?
Everything matters, but nothing matters.
Yeah, because everything does matter if you think about it. Every little thing can make a difference, positively or negatively. And sometimes we don't know. We don't know what's ultimately positive or negative. It might be positive in the moment, and yet it led to something that's ultimately negative. So everything technically could matter, but then what actually matters? So keep perspective that,
Mhm.
while things feel heavy, they shouldn't feel heavy because does it really matter? We don't even know.
Mm. Thank you, Gal. Thank you for being here. Is there anything
Well,
else you would like to leave our viewers with?
no, thank you for having me. That was long. How long did we? Wow, wow.
We're about an hour
Yeah,
and a half.
yeah. Time
Where
flies.
where can our viewers find you?
Oh, don't look for me.
Don't look for you.
No.
He's cutting back his practice. He has 3
I
kids.
need
He's
I
limited.
don't
So
like being, I like when you said this was going to be video as well. I'm like, oh man, I don't need my face out there. I hate
Well,
being recognized,
well,
honestly.
you are going to be recognized,
Uh,
and thank you for being here, though, and to our viewers and listeners on YouTube, thank you for watching. And if you like this podcast, please click the like and subscribe button, and you can also find us at mega-podcast.com. And until next time.